course, the most sort of Caesar-like character of our age is the President of the United States. And you wrote in the Sunday Times a kind of how Suetonius might do the life of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Well, first of all, is that true? I mean, do you think that Trump is the most Caesar-like of the modern kind of political characters?
It's been a long-term ambition of mine to write an equivalent of Suetonius' Lives of the Caesars about post-war US presidents, because they are the head of a great imperial power, and they have a kind of authority, I guess, that a prime minister wouldn't.
No, we're the visiting barbarian tribe.
Yeah, well, we're the client king. We're the Greek client
suing
king.
For peace on the frontier. Yeah.
I think what you get with Trump is he is a self-mythologizing figure. He relishes the degree to which doing or saying shocking things can win him political support. I think that's been his great discovery. I'm not comparing him to Caligula or Nero, but in another sense I am. Because I think that what those emperors discovered was that in the Roman context, they could appeal over the heads of the traditional elites to people who were a bit fed up with kind of stiff marmoreal formality, pious utterings of political cliches and so on. And by saying shocking things, Caligula or Nero could win a constituency. And I think to a degree, Trump has found a kind of similar dynamic. And it may seem ridiculous to compare such different systems, 2,000 years separate them, except that to a degree, it is baked into the American system because the American founding fathers did consciously model the United States on the early Roman Republic. And therefore, American politicians, ever since Benjamin Franklin said, "We have a republic if you can keep it," have been worrying that the fate of the Roman Republic may be visited on the American Republic. And so they are always looking out for a Caesar. And a president behaving like a Caesar, therefore, is a massive taboo. And that is another taboo that Trump has cheerfully trampled on. I think that the bling, the gold, the Trump Tower, everything, behaving like a Caesar, and I use Caesar in the sense of Caesar's palace in Las Vegas rather than an authentic Caesar, is another way in which Trump is shocking, and that shock generates political support.
So do you think you can, I mean, presumably lots of those presidents, not Donald Trump, who I think boasts that he doesn't read books, I think is one of his...
Well, except for the ones that he's written.
Yeah, apart from the art of the deal. But, I mean, lots of these presidents in the past would have read Suetonius, certainly British politicians for, hundreds of years would have read Suetonius. I mean, to what extent is this a kind of timeless guide to power and the exercise of power, or is it so specific to the Roman period?
I think it is pretty specific to the Roman period, except that as a portrait of what happens with an autocracy, when a republican system is replaced by a monarchy, it has served as a kind of warning to people for centuries and centuries. As clearly Suetonius also kind of thought that he was providing that. So I think in that sense, the Caesars, not just because of Suetonius, but also because of Tacitus in this period, provide us in the West with our kind of primal exemplars of tyranny. And
is it tyranny or is it, exercise of power?
Well,
playing people
So-
off,
so for Einhard-
dealing with difficult, complex situations, finding a way out, all that.
You're right. I think for Einhard, who's writing about the life of Charlemagne modelled on Augustus, and for others since, the life of Augustus in particular has kind of provided a model. But I think more recently, and particularly through the 20th century, the court of the Caesars hangs behind how many, many people have thought about the process by which a democracy or a republic can become an autocracy. And I think it's definitely there in liberal anxieties about Trump, for instance.
And then kind of turning, we've got about 10 minutes left. So where does this fit into, your life? I'm sure lots of people here are big fans of the podcast. I mean, I have my own modest podcast, and I just look at yours and think you must spend so much time preparing for it, and it kind of must sort of suck all your spare time away. Could you do, given its unbelievable success, could you do another book like this, or do you not have the time? Are you reading up?
Well, I can see my agent. I can see my agent sitting in the audience. We have discussed it because I originally began the podcast with the main aim, as I did every kind of media thing, to try and amplify publicity for my books. And now the podcast has completely crushed my time to write books. So,
well, it probably helps sell the book, I imagine.
It does, it does take up an enormous amount of time because we have to, we do our own research, so we don't have researchers or anything. And it's
why do we were talking about this before we came on. I thought it was very interesting that you don't have researchers and you do your own research, and you obviously have to jump around from 1968 to the Belgians in the Congo. Why do you do it yourself? Why don't?
Well, partly because it's so fun. Partly because
those Belgians, they were having a great time.
Well, it is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, look, some of the darkest episodes are fascinating to study. History is full of monstrous crimes and horrors. As also, not only that, but when you write a book, or when you translate a classic, it's quite a commitment. I mean, it could be a year, it could be 2, 3 years of work on a single topic. And there's a deep pleasure to that, to immersing yourself in a subject, to feeling that you have kind of soaked it into your bones. But equally, there is a pleasure in doing a topic and then moving to another topic and then doing another topic and finding out about subjects that otherwise you would never have the inspiration or the time or the focus to get to grips with. And that for me is what
so you don't
the
go,
podcast
oh, thank
gives
God,
me.
we're back with the Romans.
I always enjoy doing the Romans, but I also really enjoy doing subjects that I knew nothing about, be it pigeons or Chatham High Street or 1968. So I mean, it's doing it with a friend who has an incredible knowledge of history, and particularly of periods that I know nothing about, and being able to talk to him about subjects like, 1968 was Dominic's mastermind subject. So to do that 6-part series that we did to coincide with the American election was an incredible privilege for me. So I find it inexhaustibly enjoyable because essentially the fascination of history is inexhaustible.
We have had a question from someone saying, are Dom and Dave somewhere tonight doing an event on Jim Callahan?
Well, they're both Cotswolds.
Chipping
Norton, the Chipping Norton set. I think Dominic's always saying how he's running into David Cameron in the local Waitrose. Must be Waitrose. It wouldn't be Lidl, would it? So they probably are, yes.
I think they call it the Chipping Snorting set in the Daily Mail.
Well, Dominic, ex-Daily Mail now.
What is people's fascination with history? I mean, you obviously studied history. You did a PhD in history.
Well, I didn't actually.
On Byron and
Well, he is kind of history, I guess.
yes, but then but you're not a professional. I mean, I'm a mere modest history undergraduate, but you're not a professional historian in that sense of an academic historian.
No,
and you.
But I am professional in the sense that it makes me money.
Yes. Yeah. Probably more than all the historians put together, I imagine. But but what is the? So I guess two questions as we come towards it. Why didn't you become an academic historian, and why? What you're saying, which is you pick up topics, and you don't know anything about them when you start, but you obviously apply. I would say not just a kind of historical approach, but also a narrative approach. You're looking for what interests people. Has the sort of academic history profession forgiven you, or are they?
Well, no, probably not. Particularly since actually my background is in literature, and I didn't do history because I dreaded. I mean, it's the awful truth. I dreaded the kind of graphs that I would have to look at to study industrial production in 1830s Lancashire or something like that. That's what I was worried about. And I began
no
my
job for you at the Treasury then.
No, I would be terrible. I'd be terrible.
Oh look, it's all going down.
Yeah, I doubt I'd even be qualified to read that. And so I wanted to be a great novelist, and I discovered I wasn't a great novelist, but I did discover that I could use my research into Byron to write a novel in which he had actually been a vampire.
Right.
And this set me up writing several novels in which vampires were integrated into periods of history. Right. So I had late Victorian London, I had Restoration England.
Who's the lady in New Orleans who made a great success of this?
Anne Rice.
Yeah. But
never heard of her. And then Tutankhamun and Akhenaten.
Right.
And I realized doing that actually history was what I wanted to do.
Right.
And it was like I'd been looking for my theme as a writer, and I had misidentified what it was that I most wanted to write about and what most moved and inspired me. And that was then how I started writing history for a general audience rather than for an academic audience. Although everything I write is crucially dependent on the work that academics do. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
You and your partner generously cite.
Well, it's not generous. It's the due that we owe them. I mean, it's the debt that we need to pay, because we couldn't do what we do without the incredible work that scholars do. And there's nothing quite like the glow of excitement you feel when you read a brilliant scholarly work on an aspect of history that perhaps you know well, and it's making you see it in a new way, or perhaps it's opening your eyes to the fascination of a period that previously you knew nothing about. And if we can share some sense of the excitement that kind of work is conveying, then I'm really happy if we can do that.
But then, and so to draw us to an end, and yet if say you do your vampire novels, you do your
Well, I don't do them anymore.
You do your podcast. It feels like this. I know this has been long in gestation. You wrote this bit in the lockdown, but this is sort of coming back to something that's very scholarly. I'm still sort of fascinated that you decided of all the kind of things you could do in your limited time, I'm going to go and translate a Latin text. You've sort of come full circle. Isn't this the kind of other career you could have had back in your early 20s?
I mean, I suppose that of all the topics that I have studied, from childhood, Rome is what has most interested me. And therefore, the opportunity to translate something like this and then to have it published and to be able to talk about it is incredibly exciting for me. I'm absolutely interested in covering, a wide array of topics like we do on the podcast. But I also, I don't want to forego the experience of engaging very, very closely with a subject. And I suppose that translating a text like that is, in a way, getting as close as you possibly can, because you have to think about it very, very deeply in a way that you wouldn't otherwise.
And we're going to get your lives of the presidents.
I don't know.
Someone can translate in the future into
Well, it'd be wonderful if I do write that, and that's the only thing that survives from...
in some monastery, hundreds of years ago.
Elon Musk accidentally pulls out the plug. Everything vanishes, except for my lives of the presidents. And people are debating who Monica Lewinsky was in the year 4000.
I once introduced her to Boris Johnson, by the way.
Oh, my God. I might put that in the life of Clinton.
I couldn't believe that. I was talking to her. I couldn't believe it when she said, I'm Monica Lewinsky. I was like, oh. And then Boris Johnson was, and I said, oh, Boris Johnson, would you like to meet me? Thought they might get on. But anyway. So listen, it's a terrific read. I know you've already got some of the podcasts that have picked up on some of the Caesars. Thank you for continuing to entertain us with Dominic. You are going to be available to sign this, but there are a lot of people in this room. You might be here for a long time.
Or after that, I might not.
Yeah. But on behalf of everyone here, thank you. Thank you for entertaining us, but thank you in particular for this terrific translation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.